Shaun. Shaun stretched when he awoke. Sanem lay in the bed next to him. She stared at him and smiled when their eyes met. "Good morning," she said. "Is it still morning?" Shaun asked. "It's noon, I checked," Sanem said. "We should go back to sleep then," Shaun said jokingly. "Did you have a nice time last night?" Sanem asked. "I sure did. How about you?" Shaun asked. "I did. I like your friends. I can't believe you've been telling them all that I'm a bitch. They probably thought they were going to hate me when they met me." Shaun patted her small, fake breast and smiled. "You were on very good behavior last night. I'm proud of you." He leaned over and kissed her lightly on her forehead. He laid back down in his bed and put his arm around Sanem's soft shoulders. She kissed his chest. "Well, I liked YFC. I can tell that you're all very close friends. You all care about each other a lot," Sanem said. "I guess. I mean, they're pretty cool. Chris and Joe are kind of shitty sometimes, though. They're the type of people who eat food standing up in my bedroom without a plate underneath them. They just bite into cookies and I just watch the crumbles fall and gather on the floor." "Richie's not like that," Shaun said. "Richie's a little weird, Shaun. Did you see how quiet he was last night? Why is he so shy?" "He was around friends. Was he nervous around the girls?" Sanem asked. Shaun sighed. "No, I don't think it was the females. He's been getting more like that recently. I don't know why. He's hiding something. And he always seems angry. I'll be in the middle of a conversation, I'll just look at his face, and it just looks like he's off in his own world of hate and discomfort. I try to get him out of that. I try to introduce him to some lightheartedness into his life. I try to get him to laugh. I don't know why he's taking himself so seriously," he said. "What were you saying to him last night at the car? When I came out of the house, you were across the street talking to him," Sanem said. "Oh, I told him that he never has to feel alone as long as I'm alive. That I would be his friend forever and he could talk to me about anything whenever he wanted to," Shaun said. "Aw, that's really sweet of you. What did he say?" Sanem asked. "He said thanks," Shaun snorted. "I almost cried in front of him. I can't get that guy to open up. I know he has problems. I don't understand why he won't talk to me about them. Maybe he talks to Caleb. I don't care about that. I just hope he's going somewhere to get it off his chest." "Shaun, you can't expect everyone to be like you, honey. You tell everyone who will listen your problems. Not everyone is like that. Some people are more private. It's good that you offered to listen to Richard if he wanted to talk to you, but you can't force him to. And to be honest with you, I think you should stop doing that." "Doing what?" "Telling everybody about your problems. You put yourself out there too much. You let people judge you. You let the whole world know what's wrong with you. That's not good," Sanem said. "Why is it not good?" Shaun asked. "Because people will think less of you. People think you're an asshole, or they'll laugh at you for something that you told them you did." "So you're saying I should be more like Richard and keep everything bottled up? He walks around like he's frightened of the world and what they might think of him. That's how you'd like me to be?" Shaun asked. "I'm not saying you have to be like Richard, but you shouldn't put yourself out there like that all the time. Who are these people that you let judge you all the time? What the fuck does Chris or Rich or that guy Sam have going on in their life that they get to think that they're better than you? Do you understand?" "Sanem, on my 18th birthday I smoked weed for the first time. I had my first nervous breakdown then. I took a piece of paper and filled the front and back of it up with my stream of consciousness. I looked at it the other day. You know what it kept on saying over and over again? Let them laugh. It kept saying, let them laugh. It said that I was too concerned with what people think of me. It said that I was hiding myself from people because I was scared of what they might think of the real me. I thought that they would laugh at me. So I wrote myself a letter telling myself to let them laugh. I did it all right in front of Chris and Joe and my brother. I was bawling my eyes out. I had never, ever cried so hard in my entire life. They still make a joke about it to this day, and I laugh along with them. Ever since then, I've learned two things: to care less about what people think of me, and to not take the things I do so seriously. If I trip and fall flat on my face and someone starts laughing at me, I laugh along with them. I can't walk through life afraid that people will think that the things I do or think are wrong or stupid or funny. Fuck them. I invite them to judge me. I judge them back. I judge that Richard is terrified of being perceived as weak. I judge that Chris is a fucking loser. A nice guy, but a loser nonetheless. If YFC were to die right now, Chris would go on working at Cosi, smoking weed on the weekends, and dreaming about the life he could have had if he ever tried to go and fucking get it. Joe is an asshole. I like him. I think he's funny, but he's a fucking asshole. I don't even have to get started on Sam. And as far as their girlfriends are concerned, if you think for 1 second I care about what a woman thinks about the things I do, then you don't know me at all." Sanem stared at Shaun for a second. "Why don't you care about what a woman thinks of you, Sinem asked softly. Because they're emotional, irrational, illogical, stupid. And I say stupid not to illustrate that they are unintelligent. Look at you. You're interning at some business company and you're on your way to getting a bachelor's degree in global communications and blah, blah, blah. I say that girls are stupid in the correct use of the word. Stupid is when someone does something again and again and expects a different result. I think that most girls are stupid. My mom is stupid for spending 2 years trying to get her husband to fuck her again because she was convinced that if he did, he would move back into the house. Yet every time it happened, he would orgasm and leave. And she convinced herself that the next fuck would be the fuck that would get him back. Stupid, Shaun said. Do you think I'm stupid? Sinem asked. A little bit, Shaun said. I don't know why you're still in this bed with me. You talk about how you want a future with someone, and I keep telling you I can't have you in my future. And I'm sure you're convinced that if you keep at it, you're going to change my mind, but I'm here to tell you that it's not going to happen. I'm being honest with you. I'm not hiding that fact from you. Someone else might. Chris cheated on Kate with a bunch of different girls. I don't believe in cheating because I think that's worse than what I do. It's deception. I don't believe in lying to a person to get what you want. I believe that I can stay true to myself and let other people see my honest self and still manage to get the things that I want in life. I'm sure of that. I want to prove that to everyone. I don't have to lie to get the things I want from life. I refuse to play by everyone else's rules, Shaun said firmly. Chris cheated on his girlfriend, Sinem asked. Repeatedly. I actually helped him do it the first time, which I'm not proud of. I got him to have sex with our manager at our very first job. He was 17 and she was 26, and I thought it would be the coolest thing in the world if he accomplished it. And I engineered the whole thing. He wouldn't even get it up when he did it. He didn't orgasm. Looking back, I was the one who wanted to have sex with her, not him. He just did it because he knew other people would think it was cool. But he can't even talk about it because then Kate would find out. So now he looks like a huge idiot. And I regret that I manipulated him. To this day, I regret that I forced him to do that. I don't ever want to force anyone to do something they're not. But that was just one time. You said he did it a bunch of times, Sinem said. He was young, Sinem. He was young and hot. All the girls thought he was gorgeous for some reason. I got no attention in high school. He did. He lost his virginity to Kate. Hotter girls kept flocking to him and flirting with him. He fucked a couple of hot ones. He actually dated one at the same time as Kate for like 3 months. He got out of his system, though. Obviously, he's with the person that he wants to be with. I don't know why he chose Kate over Cole. She was more attractive and gave better head, but he did. He probably felt threatened by her. I don't think he has much confidence in himself, Shaun said. Why do you say that? Sinem asked. Shaun shrugged. Just stories that stick out to me. He has erectile dysfunction issues that stick out in my head. First time he had sex with Kate, he couldn't get hard. Same thing with the manager. And same thing with Nicole. Plus, out of everyone in YFC, he seems the most content with where he is in his life right now. I feel like Chris belongs in this town. It's like he's starting to grow roots. Richard is antsy as fuck to get out and make his mark on the world. Joe is still delusional enough to think that he is leaving his mark on the world. And me, I'm the most miserable fuck out of the whole group, he said. Sinem stroked his chest slowly in absent contemplation. I think you're right. I think Chris is happy with his life right now. I don't think he needs much more than weed, a girlfriend, and his friends to make him happy. And Kate seems nice enough. I can tell that they don't go out much just from the way she dresses herself. They probably stay inside all day and have sex and watch TV, she said. Shaun smiled. Who said there's anything wrong with that? I'm hard. Oh yeah? Sinem asked, smiling. He watched her hands slowly descend underneath the covers. A second later, Shaun felt her grip around his dick. That was easy, he whispered. You're right about everyone, but you're too hard on Joe. I can tell he really cares about all of you guys. Especially you. He really respects you, Sinem said as she stroked him up and down on Shaun's wrecked penis. I don't think Joe respects anybody, least of all me. He's on his own pedestal of superiority, which is why I can't imagine the mental hurdles he has to leap over to get himself into believing that his girlfriend is good enough for him, Shaun said. Sinem laughed as she pulled the covers back and lowered her head. She is pretty ugly, but she's so sweet. I talked to her in there. I feel bad for her. I feel bad for both of them. She's too sensitive. She needs to grow up, she said. He could feel her warm breath against his dick. That's how close her face was to it. He closed his eyes and felt her wet mouth and close around it. He moaned softly. She needs to grow up, Shaun thought. How ironic that that's coming out of your mouth, he grinned. He had done it again. He put his hands behind his head and let her continue dethroning his penis. She is nice. She actually reminds me a lot of Legs, believe it or not, with the insecurities. She hated when I even mentioned another girl's name around her. Jennifer's the same way, it seems. Insecure. And with none of the physical attractiveness. I hope she's a freak in bed, Shaun said, laughing. He heard Sinem give a muffled laugh that quickly turned into a choke. Shaun shook his head and wondered why he was so awesome. She looked up at him. His dick fell out of her mouth. As mean as Joe is to her, I can tell why she stays with him. He has a good heart. He cares for the people in his life. I can see that. I have the same thing. She lowered her head again and kissed the tip of Shaun's dick before swallowing it completely. Shaun cocked his head in a curious thought. You know, you might actually have something there. I'm thinking of the time when I ran away to Florida. I remember I had turned my phone off after everyone found out that I had left. I wasn't ready to talk to anybody yet. Anyway, I talked to my mom so she wouldn't die of a heart attack, and she made me check into a hotel. So I turned my phone back on, and I saw all the text messages and voicemails that everyone had left while I was driving. I think I had made it all the way to Georgia. Anyway, Richard and Chris had left text messages asking shit like, "Did you really bounce just like that?" But Joe was the only one who left a voicemail. And when I listened to it, I fucking burst into tears. I just remember how hurt he sounded, how shocked and worried for me he was. I never saw that coming. I was shocked. It sounded like he was on the verge of tears. I never thought that Joe would be the one who would do that. Shaun let out a deep sigh as Sanem tenderly stroked his soaked dick. "Go on, I'm listening," she said softly. "A month or two after I was down there, his brother died. His older brother. He died in some train accident, at least I think it was an accident. I think he might have killed himself, I don't know. I've never had the balls to ask Joe what actually happened. Anyway, he texted me about it, and I still remember what he said to me in that text. He said it feels like I've lost two brothers in the same month. I felt so bad for him. You know, this has always been a huge thing I've wanted to do in my life. Listen to myself talk while getting ahead. I must have told you that before, which is why you're doing it right now. Kind of an inappropriate topic to talk about, though," Shaun said with a soft chuckle. His hands found the back of her head as he forced her mouth deeper onto his cock. He heard her gag, and he smiled. "Poor Chris," he whispered. "Why poor Chris?" Sanem whispered when she came up for air. "Well, because Joe might be getting this type of treatment from his ugly girlfriend, but I know Kate isn't doing this kind of shit. He told me she hates giving head. I imagine a lot of missionary position. Ugh, so boring. The things we must tell ourselves in order to sleep at night," Shaun said. He looked down at the top of Sanem's head as it bobbed up and down. He felt a sudden rush of sadness. "The things we must tell ourselves," he whispered once more. 7/21/2013. I think this will help. I've always been one to want to understand my motivation for any action I partake in. Any thought or feeling that flickers into my consciousness, I want to know why it did. I don't bother analyzing dreams anymore. I don't fuck with the subconscious at all, in fact. I look at my actions and I try to understand them. My skin has gotten thinner. I used to be far cockier than I am now. Anyone could say anything about me, and if it didn't seem truthful to me, I didn't care. If someone accused me of homosexuality, I would call them an idiot and not think about them again. Now everyone's opinion of me matters. It wasn't what Richard said that made me feel so offended. It was my own fault. My defense against other people has almost become non-existent. I got concerned when Trina said she didn't know how Sanem could put up with me. I thought she was joking, but I still asked myself why she could say that. That cook at Applebee's really bothers me. I don't know why this fat man can make me feel this way. I hate the way he looks at me. Where did my confidence go? I miss my arrogance. I want it back. I want to respect myself again. Now is when I talk about the HPV. Yesterday I spent time with Sanem before work. The conversation started with me retelling the story about Richard accusing me of being obsessed with my ex-girlfriend Legs. He said that we'd been broken up for a year and I still want to talk about her. He yelled at me to get over her. He called her a mediocre whore. It all hurt. Earlier that night I was talking to him. I made a comment about Sanem's teeth being nicer than her mother's, to which Richard replied, "Yeah, she's not perfect either." He says things in such a mean way. Anyway, I was over Sanem's house yesterday morning, and somehow we got onto the topic of us needing to break up. I told her that I feel guilty for stringing her along for the months leading up to California. I thought it was wrong and I couldn't do it anymore. I told her that she is on her best behavior and I'm just waiting for her to get comfortable again. I told her as much information as I could to make her understand that she shouldn't be with me. I told her I want to go to California alone. I told her I had HPV. She tried to leave me after that information. She put on her fake icy exterior again. Still didn't work. I threw rocks at her to make the bitch leave. Rocks. She wouldn't leave otherwise. Why can't she see the horrible person I've become? 7/22/2013. I have a diary. Congratulations. Last night I texted Amy for sex. It took me some time to remember her number, but it's hard to truly forget your most dependable whore's number, even if she isn't that dependable and isn't so much a whore. She came over at 5 today. The first thing out of her mouth was something about how weird I was. I don't care anymore. Just as quickly as it came, I feel it subsiding again. like a wave. I'm supposed to be interesting enough to write a book about, and right now I'm feeling nothing. Caleb said I have anxious energy around me. I can't stop thinking and talking about myself. Being around him makes matters worse. I feel guilty. Can I write a book about that? I feel good about myself every time I let someone talk for more than 5 minutes. This happened recently. I encourage friends to talk about themselves, to say whatever they're thinking. They aren't as open as I am, so much for it. I'm not that interesting, but I am the only thing that I think about, so I will write about me. I have concepts. So let's start writing about people. Richard Casimo. I met Richard Casimo in summer school. Before I begin, I would like to say if you spend enough time with anyone, they have a high potential of being interesting. This isn't to say Richie Boy is about as interesting as the next person in life, but it is to say human individuals are interesting. On to Richie Boy. Richie Boy had a big head and a scrawny body when I first met him. A deep voice that was the most notable trait about him at first encounter. I thought he was an alright guy. I didn't think much about him during class, so let's skip forward to our next encounter. Max Neeson and I had been cast in a school play to see how they run. I remember the first time I was on Richard's porch with Max. He rang the doorbell and I didn't know who was about to answer it. I remember the excitement I felt when it was that kid from that summer school. At that particular point in time, I realized that I did have a positive opinion of the kid. I expressed it to him on his porch, and I knew we would be long-term friends. Right there, I knew it. Max Neeson left the circle, but his purpose was to introduce me to Richie Boy. We both knew Joe separately, given that Richard took the same classes as Joe. The first film me and Rich ever did was Imogen Heap's Hide and Seek. It was filmed after my participation in Joe's music video, Get Your Fruit On. After that, Richard and Joe joined forces, and shortly after, Young Folks Comedy was born. I have watched Richard's progression over the years, and have observed the things that never change. He is a shy guy, one who isn't very open about what he is thinking and feeling. When it comes to his weaknesses and insecurities, he all but never addresses them in public. These are superficial insecurities that people can talk about on chance encounters, things like I sleep too much, or I'm never happy with my work. He thinks things about himself, negative things that he doesn't trust anyone to understand or to not judge. He's falling for a 16-year-old. He finally told me yesterday after keeping it a secret from me, his closest friend, for a month and a half. He's ashamed. He is highly competitive. When he is not the best at something, he does his best not to be the worst. If he can't succeed at that, he says whatever the activity is, it's a stupid one, something that is irrelevant. He is extremely guarded about anything he is passionate about. He tries not to respect many people. That way, when they critique him, he can quickly discredit them. He does not want to be the best at anything. I don't think he thinks he is deserving of such a title in any regard. He just wants to be noticed, respected. He wants his voice heard, but most times is too shy to speak. This creates a complexity. There have been numerous occasions where Richard is in a situation where he does not do what he should, give his input. RV's Finest was one of those first instances that I can remember where he did not add his voice into the creative process. Much of this is out of direct correlation to Joe, who Richard has developed a type of rivalry between. Many of the videos that we filmed in high school and the year after were born out of Joe's head, not Richard's. Rich sat silently by as he watched Joe's slightly more extroverted personality take over the group he was partly responsible for creating. He was quiet and used that time to focus on other aspects. He became funnier and more confident in front of the camera. I remember the day we conceived in No Haven, the talk that we were having as I sat on the kitchen floor. I mentioned how we were wasting time. The first pilot we made wasn't good enough. Why not make another one? So we sat there and hashed out an idea about homeless people versus cops. We decided to keep it from Joe and Chris. We wanted a rough copy before we approached them with it, so we had that done in less than 2 weeks. Joe read it and said he literally had no words for how good he thought it was. That was an extraordinary moment for me and Richie Boy. All that time of Richard sitting on the sidelines came to this. He was finally in charge of our biggest production, until he wasn't. Joe took over slowly and subtly. He asked for Richard's approval of script changes. They got together to talk about directing it together. By the end of the production, there was only one director. Richard became the editor. I saw the whole thing. 7/23/2013. My girlfriend is gone and I miss her. For as long as I can remember, my favorite distraction against the real world has been another human. Their skin, their smell, the sight of someone attracted to myself and for my own pleasure. That was my escape. Today I felt lonely, and as I worked, I realized I had nothing to look forward to. No text from my girlfriend about her day, or her asking me about mine. Instead, I received nothing. A text from a friend or acquaintance. I want it to be her so I don't feel so alone. My sex drive is quite low. I hope to convert this feeling into something productive. Anyway, this coworker Gabby came up to me today and asked me if I went to school. She proceeded to tell me her major was drama and that she was a huge fan of Shakespeare. At that moment, I resisted the urge to quote Hamlet because that would have been douchey. She told me her boyfriend was also into theater but did not get into the drama program at his college, to which I asked if he was white and skinny. His entire life filled my eyes in mere seconds. The sad thing is, I don't miss Sanem. I miss my girlfriend. I've just learned that I do not work tomorrow. My first impulse was to celebrate with someone who I would want to care. I could not text Sanem. I think something will happen at the end of this detox. I think so. My brother is in the other room with his hoarse voice entertaining a 20-year-old engaged mother. Something he has been doing for what seems like months. Some people's escapes are worse than others, though who am I to talk? I fucked Amy without a condom. Tomorrow, I hope to spend alone. I will think of Sanem and I will go to the gym and write for a period of time. I will start at the beginning. 7/24/2013. The YFC idea. The goal is to capture the truth that these 4 individuals have the potential to be truly successful in their craft. The goal is to show how much they believed in themselves and how that belief slowly fades over time, leaving nothing but an unstable ego. They forget where that confidence came from. They look for other avenues to keep the inflated ego intact. Slowly that fades too. The story is about them. It's about every person who was truly good at something and never got the chance to flourish at it. It's about salvation, a happy ending. As the 4 drift apart, it becomes harder and harder to keep the delusion going. Some become angry, Richard. Some become complacent and indifferent, Chris. Some become unstrung, lost, confused, and feeling out of place, Shaun. And Joe. Joe keeps the illusion going the longest, at least in front of his compatriots, his fellows in arms. What he's like and away from them is a mystery as of now. Here's the list as to what is going on as of now. I've just been denied financial aid. I now have to decide whether or not to continue my education at BCC. If I do, one way or another I will end up having to pay for it. I have to decide if it's worth it. Will I regret it later in the future? It would make for a better story if I went to LA without a single college degree, but only if I find success. If I find failure, then I will wish I had stayed for my associates. I think no matter what, at the end of the year, I will wish I had an associate's. I called Sanem because I didn't know what to do. Is any of this real? Am I even allowed to be feeling these things? My car is making noise. I need a new one. If I am to take this seriously, I should get a second job without a doubt. I know that I'm very lazy, but how much success do I suspect to find with this personality? Something must change. I feel stressed. I feel excited about the novel. I think of all the material I can use to make it a complete book. I'm still very much concerned as to how I'm going to write for the other 3. No matter what I do, the interactions they experience on a day-to-day basis won't nearly be as detailed. I called my mother and I told her about my school problem. She offered to help me pay it. I almost cried. I hate asking people for money, especially my parents, after what I did to them. 7/25/2013. The shit's that's about to go down at this household is going to be on par with the long-heralded legs memory. On par. Again, for the second time in my life, I have broken up with a girl, hurled nasty insults at her, done everything but physically beat the girl, and she has come to me on her hands and knees, begging to let me fuck her. I told her I fucked Amy. I'm doing it again to another girl. I never thought this would happen again, especially so soon, and to Sanem. A year ago, Legs texted me and asked to come to get the ring she threw at me the day before. On the way, she offered to suck my dick one last time, and I told her to suck my dick and leave. I put her in front of the mirror and used her face as a vagina. Mind you, she looked super hot. Tan, wedges, and I manhandled her. Now Sanem is coming to me later tonight in the shortest dress she owns, in wedges. After I've definitely broken up with her, after I've told her I don't want her, that I want to use her for sex, and she said okay. Then I told her I had sex with Amy, and she is still coming. I'm a horrible person, but I've thought about the last time I fucked Legs since then. I know I'm weird. I don't know why I make these girls fall in love with me. I make them so willing to handle my dark side. Their emotions blind them. They hear me speak about the things I've done to them, the thoughts I share with them about them, but because they love me, they accept it. They accept it. Sanem lies to herself far more than Legs did. Tried to convince herself that she isn't coming for anything besides me to fuck her. But I am too mean. I wouldn't let her keep that illusion. I wouldn't let her lie to herself to retain that self-deception, that self-respect. There's something seriously wrong with the way I treat these human beings. Seriously, I like this stuff. It's weird, but I will love every second of this. Stay tuned for the real details. 7/26/2013. We used to have these things called grateful journals back in 5th grade. The teacher would ask what we were grateful for on a day-to-day basis. They don't ask those things of 21-year-olds. Thank God. Everything has become so complicated. I'm older now, and there's too many things that I want. Sinem wants to be my whore, and I'm reluctant because I care for her. I used her last night to my desire. I didn't do anything to her that was abnormal or too degrading, but I can. I have that power even though I don't want it. After I came last night, she looked at me with loving eyes, and it made me sick. She fed me and didn't say a word other than more, with a soft, submissive voice. She sounded like a slave, and she liked it. I felt her, and she was soaked, feeding me. It's almost too much for my brain to fathom. How I feel is so mixed. I don't want to take advantage of her, but she is asking me to. I'm going to do my best not to think about it, and to take whatever she is willing to offer, which is everything. This relationship is ruined. Chris, you're one lucky fucker. Christopher. Chris cut into his pork chop and put a forkful of it into his mouth. He chewed slowly and stared down at his plate. Kate sat to the left of him, her mother to his right. Chris looked up briefly at Kate's father, who sat across the table from him. He had a large smile on his face as he stared at Chris. Chris looked back down at his plate. So, Chris, how's Cozy treating you? Are they working you ragged over there? Kate's father asked. More or less. Some days are better than others. Recently, we've been getting killed because of the spike in catering orders. That's dying down now, though. There's less holidays to celebrate. But yeah, they keep me busy, Chris said. Well, it's because Danny knows how you can handle it. Danny's our boss, Dad. Danny's our boss, Dad. He freaking loves Chris. Hank, the general manager, just got fired, and Danny just about asked Chris if he wanted to take the position. Kim, Kate's sister, said. She sat next to her father across the table from Chris. The general manager got fired? You didn't tell me that, Chris, Kate said. Yeah, it just happened, Chris said, chewing. A general manager getting fired is pretty serious. What did he do? Kate's mother asked. He was just a screw-up, Mom. He was incompetent. He kept coming in with hangovers, or he was high. We think he was taking prescription drugs and coming to work, too. Danny tried to put him through a drug test, but Hank wouldn't do it, so Danny fired him, Kim said. And the owner offered you the position, huh? Kate's father asked, staring intently at Christopher. It made Chris extremely uncomfortable. Kind of, Chris said. I think Kim might be exaggerating the story just a little bit. That's what happened. I was there. Danny said it was going to be hard choosing a replacement for Hank because whoever he chose would have to take him riding. He would have to take him riding them hard, like being strict and hard on them and all that stuff. So then he looked right at Chris and was like, "You don't want that, do you?" And Chris is like, "Nah, I'm good." With his little cocky shrug that he does, Kim said, laughing. Chris laughed. I'm pretty sure he was joking when he said that. I don't think he meant it. He looked right at you and asked you. You could be general manager of that place if you wanted to. Just accept that, Kim said. Yeah, well, I don't want to. I have enough responsibilities as it is, Chris said. Yes, but you'd make more money, Kate's mom said. Not as much as you think. It's like $5,000 more a year, with more headaches, more time at work, and more of Danny breathing down my neck. No thanks, Chris said. At least he's honest, Kate's father said. Kate placed her hand on his back and rubbed it back and forth. Chris looked at her and she smiled warmly at him. So be straight with me here. How much do you like working at the place? Kate's father asked. I like the money. $32K is something I never expected to make at this point in my life. Other than that, I can actually tell you I'm not like the other managers when it comes to getting enjoyment out of telling people what to do. I hate it. The only reason I do it is because if I don't yell at the employees, then Danny yells at me. I still don't even know how I got the position to tell you the truth, Chris said. Because you're great at it. You work well under pressure, you stay calm and focused, and you have confidence of your own ability, which is a quality of leadership. Me and Danny see that about you. I don't know why you don't, Kim said. Chris looked at Kim and began to say something before Kate's father cut him off. Bottom line, you don't want to work there for the rest of your life, he asked. Definitely not. I'm looking forward to my last day there, Chris said. And when's that going to be? Anytime soon? What's going on with college? Are you planning to go back? Dad, Kate whispered. Chris felt her hand rub intensely on his back in small, annoying, condescending circles. I am planning to go back. It's taken a lot longer than I intended because of the sporadic scheduling at Cozy. I plan on talking to Danny over the summer, though, about getting a schedule that way I can work some courses in around it, Chris said. He dared not think of how inaccurate that statement was. It was true he had thought of going up to Danny and requesting a set schedule. The train of thought didn't go much further beyond that. What do you plan on going back for? Kate's dad asked. Law enforcement, Chris said. The answer came out of thin air, but it sounded great, so Chris went with it. No one could look down on a cop, Chris thought. You mean criminal justice? Blow my fucking brains out. Right, Chris said. Well, Chris, I certainly admire your passion for the law. From what Kim and Kate tell me about you, you're a very dependent and reliable person. I think you would make a great police officer, not like some of these insecure jerk-offs who drive around looking to pick fights with people who picked on them in high school, Kate's father said. Chris chuckled appropriately. Yeah, I think I would like that. I like the idea of doing something for the community. That'd be better than just making sandwiches all day, he said. What happens if you can't get a set schedule? Are you going to give up? The father asked. Fucking 21 questions, this guy. Chris thought. I mean, I hope it doesn't get to that point. I don't think it will. But I could look into taking some online classes or something like that just to get started, he said. Kate's father nodded his head thoughtfully as he stabbed a baby carrot and put it into his mouth. He looked up at Chris again and smiled. We're hiring again for the fall. I know that you didn't want to a couple months ago out of loyalty to Danny. I know he helped you buy your new car and everything, but I think you've done enough for him. You should feel allowed to make your own decisions now. It's a set schedule with my business. You get done at 5 every day, you don't work weekends, you get sick days, paid vacation time, health insurance, and you'll still be making the same amount of money. If you really want to go back to school this upcoming fall, then you really should think about revisiting this offer. It's not going to be here forever, and I know you don't want to be at Cozy forever. Chris nodded his head. You're right, he said. Take a week and think it over. Get back to me, though. I want you to progress your future. It's time for that to happen. The rest of the dinner went along uninterrupted. Chris tried to tell a joke or two to direct the attention off of his inadequacies. You hear about that new cemetery that just opened up not far from here? Yeah, I hear people are dying to get in there. Kate walked into the door away from her family. Her mother was clearing the dinner table in the background. So I just have to help out over here, take a shower and do some grading before I head over, okay? I should be there at around 11. That work? Kate asked. Sounds good. Chris opened the door. Thanks for the dinner, Mrs. Dobbs. It was delicious. He called out to the kitchen. He didn't wait for a response. He stepped outside and closed the door behind him. Hey, man. Just wondering when you're going to be home. I'm about to smoke and I wanted to know if I should wait for you. The text was from his nephew. On the way now. You can start the process so we're ready when I get there, Chris replied. Chris lived 5 minutes away from Kate's house. He kicked the shoes off as soon as he entered his room. Ronnie followed in behind him and took a seat on the couch. I got it ready for you, Ronnie said, taking a letter to the Dutch. Where's Anthony? At his girl's place? Chris asked. Yeah, I feel bad for him. She still doesn't know that he smokes weed. He said he's supposed to be going to this beach house with her in a couple of weeks, so he's either going to have to not smoke for 48 hours or do it when she's not looking, Ronnie said. Yeah, I went through all that shit. It blows, but you gotta do it. It beats having to get in a fight with her about why you do it and shit like that. Fucking annoying. I feel for him, though, Chris said. Yeah, I just tell my girlfriend to deal with it. I can't stand when she tries to tell me what to do. I can't stand it, Ronnie said. That's awesome, man. I can't do that with my bird. I'm too nice to her. But it's been like that since the beginning of the relationship. If I just started treating her like shit out of nowhere, she'd probably freak out and do something terrifying, Chris said, laughing. He took the Dutch from his nephew and took a long pull of the weed smoke into his lungs. So I was at work tonight and I found out that Hank got fired. They were acting like it was old news. Did that just happen or no? Ronnie asked. It happened like a week ago. It sucks because now more pressure is going to fall into the other managers, aka me. Fuck, I'm not looking forward to that shit. And Kate's dad is still in my ear about working for him, Chris said. Yeah? You're going to do it? Ronnie asked. I'm thinking about it. The way I look at it, no matter what I choose to do, it's going to be a temporary thing since the overall plan is to move to Cali as soon as possible. So I have to decide if it's worth going through the learning curve of this new job just to quit a year or so later. Not saying that there's going to be a huge learning curve, but I'm already used to the job at Cozy. I got it down pretty good. Yeah, it has some aches and pains, but it's become pretty mindless for me. I don't have to think while I'm working. I can just walk in for 8 to 12 hours and come home, smoke, watch some TV, and get some puss. I mean, it sounds boring, but I've kind of settled into it. Yeah, it's dope, though. You've got a good setup. You have a girlfriend that doesn't complain ever. At least I've never seen her do it. She's laid back, and she's just cool with you lying in your bed all day because she knows you just worked a tiring-ass shift. I think that's awesome, Ronnie said. Yeah, I know. And I also know that Kate wants me to take the job with her dad so bad because she wants to have the same schedule as me. Since she substitutes at schools, we'd both be getting off at work at around the same time. Plus, we both have weekends off, so basically if I took the job, I'd always see her. I'd never have an excuse to get away from her, Chris said. That's no good. You gotta have personal time just to be yourself, Ronnie said. Exactly, man. Like, girlfriends are cool in doses, but you can't have them around all the time. They tire you out being nice and shit the whole time. Sometimes you just want to chill up in your room and fart while watching porn or some shit, Chris said. Yeah, I know what you mean, Ronnie said. You know, Trish is planning on leaving there too. She's cute. I talked to her a couple of times. Chris groaned and leaned his head against the wall behind him. She's going to college. I've been hitting on her so hard in the past couple of weeks. I'm so fucking mad. I want to fuck her so bad, but I can't. I have her fucking number and everything. It would be so easy just to text her and ask her to hang out or some shit. She'd fuck me too. The other day I walked up to her and was like, just remember when you start getting fucked by all those college frat guys, remember that I allowed it. And do you know what she said? Fuck. She said, well, you don't have to allow it to happen if you do it first. And then she fucking gave me this fucking cutesy smile and walked away. Fuck. She wants me, Chris said. Damn. Yo, I wouldn't be able to stop myself. I would have been like, yo, what are you doing after work then? Ronnie said, laughing. I almost fucking did. New puss. I would fucking demolish it. It's been so long since I've had new puss. I don't even know what it feels like anymore. That's another thing, too. If I took the job with Kate's dad, not only would I be around her and her fucking family all the fucking time, but there's no puss whatsoever. Just dicks. Like, as sad as it is to say, Cozy is the only place I actually get to interact with females. I don't go anywhere else. It's nice to know that I could probably fuck any of the chicks that work there if I wanted to, Chris said. Yeah, man, you definitely could. I was working night shift a couple days ago, and they were all talking about you. They don't know I'm your nephew. You should have heard the shit they were saying. How, like, you're their favorite manager and how they'd fuck you in a heartbeat the moment you broke up with your girlfriend, Ronnie said. Chris closed his eyes tight and waved Ronnie's words away. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that shit. It's hard enough as it is without knowing that kind of shit, he said. Ronnie laughed as the Dutch was passed back to Chris for the third time. My bad, man. At least you know you still could, which is good, right? Sure, Chris said. He stared at the smoking Dutch in front of him. He could smell the marijuana smoke filling the room. I'd have to stop smoking weed. The job requires a drug test. I'd have to stop smoking weed for like a month to get it all out of my system. Maybe even more so since I do it so much. Shit, that sucks. Do you think you could do that? Ronnie asked. I mean, I know I could do it. The question is, do I want to do it? I know it would make Kate happy. She hates that I smoke weed. I don't know though. She has a point. It's getting to that. It's getting to the point where if I might not choose a better job just because I like to smoke weed, that's bad, right? That's like degenerate territory, Chris said. Yeah, I'd say so. You could always come back to it after the drug test, Ronnie said. Maybe. If they don't do routine checkups on the employees, I don't know. It'd be so stupid to let weed get in the way of a job that pays the same amount of money with way less working hours. Makes sense. You've probably built up a tolerance to it as well if you think about it. If you took a month off, think about how high you'd get the next time you smoke. That alone would be worth it. True. All very true, Chris said. Kate arrived at 11 o'clock on the dot. Ronnie retired to his sleeping quarters in the living room when she showed up. Chris sprayed Febreze through his room to hide the scent of weed from her. When she entered his room, Chris watched her sniff the air and frown. He waited for her to say something, but she kept quiet. She kept quiet much to his pleasure. He turned on the TV and flipped to The Price is Right, as was her usual habit. Kate lay down on the bed next to him and propped herself up with two pillows. So, did you have a nice time with my parents? Kate asked. Sure, Chris said. My dad would not stop talking about you when you left. I didn't know you wanted to go to school for criminal justice, Kate said. Yeah, I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about a lot of things recently, Chris said. Well, have you thought about taking the job with my dad? He made a lot of good points, I think. I mean, I'm not going to repeat them back to you, but don't you think what he said made sense? Kate asked. Chris nodded his head. Yeah, it does, he admitted. So are you going to apply? Kate asked. I think I just might, Chris said. That's great. It'd be so much better for both of us. Just think of how wonderful it would be if we picked out a cheap apartment together and we got to come home to each other every night. And you would be able to take night classes. I think it'd be great, Kate said happily. Yeah, it would be cool, Chris said without thought. He was doing everything he could to not focus on the conversation. He wasn't ready. He was high. He felt as if he were on the precipice of making a huge change in his life, but he didn't want to face it. Not now. Not yet. The weed helped immensely. He watched Steve Harvey do his shtick as he interviewed the show's contestants and tried his best to relax. Just a little longer. Give me one more night. Maybe some high sex. I'll make the decision in the morning. Chris, Kate said softly. What are you going to do about the drug test? Chris took a long, deep breath. Is this it? He asked calmly. Is this the point of you pushing this job so hard? Are you that obsessed with trying to get me to stop smoking weed? Tell me what is so wrong with the fact that I do it every once in a while? He said it's for the fall, right? So if I stop smoking right now, then I'd be fine if the drug test is in September. I have the last week of July and all of August to get it out of my system. I can do that. I know I can do that. But if this is the whole purpose of you trying to get me this job, then just fucking say it instead of coming up with some bullshit excuses. Do you think I'm a loser? Are you ashamed of me or some shit because I smoke weed and I look like a loser who's got nothing going on with his life? Just say it. I might be thinking the same shit as you. You haven't even thought of that. Don't beat around the bush. I hate that shit, he said, irritated. Kate looked hurt. That's not why I'm trying to get you the job, Christopher. I'm trying to get you the job because that place is working you to death. They don't appreciate the amount of effort you put into that place. They just give you a check and barely thank you. I know he gave you money for your car, but what else has he done? How often do you go to work an hour before you're scheduled to help out? How often do you leave an hour after you're supposed to? I'm just confused as to why you would continue to do it if you have a better option, that's all, she said. So it's not about the weed? Chris asked testily. If you want me to tell you that I hate the fact that you smoke weed, I will. I hate it. I think it's bad for you. I don't care what anyone else says. It scares me that you do it so often. I don't think of you as a loser for doing it. I'm just confused as to why you feel that you have to do it all the time. It makes me think that you're unhappy, and it makes me think that I'm doing something wrong. I do my best to tell myself that it's something that you do to escape the stress of work that has nothing to do with me, but if you got a new job, you wouldn't even have the stress at work, Kate said. It isn't my fault, right? I don't make you smoke weed, right? No, you're right. You're absolutely right. I smoke weed because work stresses me out. If I got a new job, then I wouldn't have to do it so much, Chris said in a monotone voice. Okay, then do what you have to do to get the job. If that means quitting smoking for a month, you can do that, right? Kate asked timidly. Chris nodded his head slowly. Yeah, I can do that, Chris said. I can do that, he repeated in his head. Okay, I just want what's best for you, Chris. I hope you know that. I just want you to be happy. I want us both to be happy, Kate said. I know, Chris said quietly. I know. Chris! Thank God that you picked up. I've got to see you as soon as possible. When can I see you? When are you next available? It was Shaun. He talked hurriedly into the phone. His voice was laden with excitement. What's up, man? What's going on? Chris asked, curious. Okay, let me give you the rundown. I've been writing a book. Well, I started writing a book several days ago. I don't want to tell anybody at YC yet because too many projects are talked about and then die right after the conversation. But the more I write, the more I realize that I've got to talk to you, Shaun said, still talking fast. You're writing a book? Chris asked. Yeah, I'm writing a book about young folks' comedy. You guys have always been my inspiration. I just realized that. You guys have always been so interesting to me. I want to tell our story. I want to tell the story of 4 kids who had all the makings in the world to be famous and successful, and I want to show how each of us individually are coming to grips with the fact that life hasn't worked out in the way that we expected it to. I want to show how the friendship between us has slowly drifted away from each other. How the only thing that's left from the group is the name, Shaun said. Wow, okay, I feel you, Chris said. So I want to interview everyone and talk about what's been going on in their lives for the past year. None of the superficial stuff. I want to know what you've been thinking about over the course of this whole period, as far back as high school. I want to know how you've been feeling about the fact that we're all still in Mount Holly with nothing, Shaun said. Oh my God, holy shit, this is fucking crazy, Chris said softly. What's crazy? The idea? Shaun asked excitedly. I'm standing here in the middle of my room with a huge black trash bag in my hand full of weed paraphernalia. I just quit smoking. I've literally spent the past 2 hours cleaning my room of all of this shit. Weed papers, lighters, Dutches, all of it. I have a trash bag full of it, Chris said. Wow, Shaun said. So I think it's just kind of crazy how you just called me out of the blue and you're writing a book about the shit that's been going on in our lives. The same day that I've decided to try and get my life back in order. Like, I'm trying to get a new job. I'll probably be moving out of my parents' house soon. I don't know. I think shit like that is kind of crazy, Chris said. Yeah, you're definitely right. What's the new job that you're trying to get? Shaun asked. It's a lawn service job. Kate's dad works in it. They do drug tests, which is why I'm quitting the weed. But yeah, that sounds awesome that you're writing a book. I'm down for doing an interview when you want to, Chris said. Awesome! That's fucking awesome. I'm so excited, Chris. When can you come over? Shaun asked. How about 9 o'clock tonight? Chris asked. Perfect. I'm really looking forward to it. I've already started writing it, and I'm getting to your part, and I can't go any further. I'll tell you all about it when you get here. I'll see you at 9. Thank you so much, Shaun said and hung up the phone. Chris put the phone down from his ear and looked around at his clean, drug-free room. This is fucking crazy, Chris said to himself. A small voice whispered in his head. It was meant to happen, Chris agreed. It was time. He didn't realize it until that very moment. He was going nowhere, and fast. He pulled the overflowing trash bag outside and threw it into the garbage can. He was on a roll. He grabbed a fresh trash bag and cleaned out his car with a newfound vigor that he hadn't felt in a long time. This was all meant to happen. He couldn't believe it. The phone call from Shaun was like a sign from God. He was doing the right thing for once, and he felt good. He talked to his brother and nephew and told him his plan for the future. He mentioned going to college for law enforcement to them. He actually believed that at that time. He told them to stop asking him to smoke weed with him, at least for the next month. After he finished cleaning out his car, he put sneakers on and went out for a 2-mile run. It was the first time he had done it in 2 years. He breathed through clean lungs. I can do this, he told himself. I can definitely do this. Chris thought of all the possibilities. He thought of getting his ideal body back, the one that he had in high school. He could afford school if he stopped spending all this money on weed. He could do it. He smiled. I could do it. Kate came over at 5 o'clock. She congratulated him on his room. Even his bed was made. Chris had sober sex. He stayed hard the whole time. He noticed it. It was all a good sign. She squeezed his hand when they walked out and got into the car. They went to Applebee's for dinner. Chris listened to her talk and felt as if a huge weight had been lifted off his shoulders. The strangest part was that he had never been aware of that weight until it was removed. Okay, so Shaun is writing a book about young folks comedy, and he needs to interview me tonight at 9. Do you want to drop me off there in a bit and scoop me up later? Chris asked after the check was dropped off. Sure, that's fine, Kate smiled. Shaun's writing a book? Since when? She asked. He literally just told me about it today. Mad random, but good for him though. He sounded excited, so we'll see if he sticks with it. I told him that I thought it was kind of crazy that he called at the moment that he did. You know, like the same day that I quit smoking weed and everything, Chris said. What's he going to interview you about? Kate asked. The stuff that I've been up to since we all graduated high school. Work and stuff, I guess. I don't really know. I'm sure he's got it all figured out. I'm kind of excited for it. I feel like it's all really good timing, Chris said. Kate nodded her head. Yeah, that sounds cool. Very interesting. Let me know how it goes, she said. Yeah, most definitely. We should probably head over there now. I think it'd be safe to do that, Chris said. They pulled up to Shaun's house at 8:55. Chris got out of the car, jogged across the street, and up the steps to the entrance of Shaun's house. He texted him, letting him know that he had arrived and was waiting out front. Shaun's car was nowhere in sight. Kate's car purred across the street as they both waited for the yellow door to open. Chris's phone rang at 9 o'clock. He answered. Hello? Chris said. Christopher! I'm so sorry. I sincerely apologize. I'm going to be there in less than 7 minutes. Just hold on. I know how unprofessional this is. I'm sorry. I'll be there soon, Shaun said hurriedly. Chris laughed. Unprofessional, man. All right, I'll see you in a bit. He hung up the phone. He looked over at Kate, who was staring at him from inside her car. He shrugged at her and jogged back over across the street. He said he's going to be here in less than 7 minutes, Chris said, getting back into the passenger seat. Okay, Kate said. She reached over to the radio and turned it up. The Dixie Chicks were playing. I love this song, she said sweetly. She looked at Chris and began singing the words. Well, I've been afraid of changing 'cause I've built my life around you. But time makes bolder, children get older, I'm getting older too. Well, I'm getting older too. She stared into his eyes as she whispered the words to him. Chris smiled and shook his head. How many times do I have to tell you that I absolutely hate when you serenade me with country music? Like, is one more time going to do it, or like 20? I'd just like to know so I have an idea of how many more times I'm going to sit through it. Ballpark the figure. Can you do that? Chris asked jokingly. Kate laughed and leaned over to kiss him on the lips. I love you, Chris. I love you so much, she whispered. I love you too, Chris said. They were holding each other's hands when Shaun pulled up across the street. So I'll call you when all this is over? I'm not sure how long it's going to take, so, Chris said. It's fine. Just have fun. I'm really happy tonight. I feel really good, Kate said. Chris nodded his head. Yeah, so do I, he said. I'll see you in a bit. Shaun grinned as he watched Chris get out of the car and cross the street to him. He held up a case of Yingling. I'm really sorry I'm late, but I bought free beers, so you can't be too mad, he said. You're ridiculous, man. What took you so long? Chris asked. Shaun sighed softly. The Persian is giving me some issues. I'm trying to get her out of my life completely. It's hard. It's always so fucking hard. We'll get into that later. Let's go inside. I don't want to keep you too long. Was that Kate who dropped you off? He asked as he opened the door to his house. Yeah, I told her I'd call her when we're done. I didn't put a time limit on it, so you have me here as long as you want, Chris said. Awesome. Fantastic. I have no idea how long this is going to take, Shaun said. I was thinking we'd do this on the screen porch, since it's nice out and everything. He walked over to the porch on the side of his house and opened the door. Works for me, Chris said. Here's the beer, Shaun said, handing him the case of beer. Let me get the light. He hit the light switch and closed the door of the living room behind them. Chris took a seat at the round stone table he was so accustomed to smoking above. Shaun sat a chair away from him. He dropped the black marble composition notebook onto the table and pulled out a pen from his pocket. First off, I have to say how extremely excited I am to be doing this. I thank you so much for coming over and helping out with this. I have really high expectations for it, Shaun said. Where did this come from? Like, where did you get the idea to do this? Chris asked. You ever heard of the show Girls? It's this show on HBO that me and Sanem have been watching. I watched this one episode in the second season, and that's kind of when it gave me the idea. In it, this European girl who was really promiscuous and just went around manipulating guys and getting them to fall in love with her, all just for a joke and a laugh. Anyway, she falls in love with this guy and marries him within 3 weeks of dating him. He's like a square, though. They basically have nothing in common with each other. She brags about it to her friends, though. She keeps talking about how in love she is with this guy she barely knows. The inspiration happened when the husband takes her to this fancy restaurant to meet his parents, and you can just tell from the exchange that the parents hate her. She's like a hippie who has no real aspirations, and they're both conservative doctors and lawyers with college degrees and shit. They basically leave the dinner thinking that their son had lost their mind. The husband gets into a big fight with his wife about how she didn't do anything to impress his parents. The fight gets blown out of proportion, and he realizes that he had made the biggest mistake of his life marrying her. So he basically throws $30,000 at her and tells her to leave. Mind you, this is a girl who's been a heartbreaker for the whole first season. So at the end of the episode, she shows up at her friend's house after the fight and gets into the bath with her, and she just starts crying profusely, out of nowhere. She just bursts into tears, and in that moment you see exactly how she feels about what happened. You see how all the events in her life had led up to that one moment in the bathtub, crying in front of her friend. The fucking around, the getting married and convincing herself that she had found love and happiness, and then the realization that she hadn't even come close. She became an individual right before my very eyes, and it was gorgeous. Then I thought of us. I thought that I would absolutely love to make a TV show like that, showing individuals' lives, their ordinary lives, and how it's all leading to something, a nervous breakdown or a moment of absolute happiness. I wanted it to be a TV show. I think it still could be a TV show, but I decided to write it as a book first because I had the means and the control to actually see it to completion. And I will see it to completion. How many pages do you have done so far? Chris asked. 36, Shaun said. I can't write anymore. I'm writing it from each of the members of our comedies group's perspective. I had to stop because I truly don't know what you're thinking and doing throughout the day, which is why you're here today. Chris smiled. Well, I'm glad I could help. He took a sip of beer. Shaun grinned. It's awesome to finally be doing something again. I bought this composition book like 3 weeks ago, and I don't even know why. And now it's full of notes and questions that need to be answered, at least half full. I can't believe it's taken me this long to come up with this idea, he said. What exactly is the story that you're trying to tell? Chris asked. Good question. Do you remember that thing I said on the 4th of July, when I said that I wish it was a law of nature to force every person to achieve their potential in life? That's basically the story I'm trying to tell. The concept that people can't be happy until they've actualized their destinies. I want to show how you, me, Joe, and Richard all had potential that we never saw come to fruition. We all thought we were capable of making it, but it didn't happen. We failed and for all intents and purposes gave up. And I just want to show what that does to a person's psyche. And then at the very end of the book, I want there to be a happy ending. I'm thinking at the end of the day, I go to California to continue pursuing my dream. That's where the book would end. The TV show could keep going, though, for seasons and seasons. It could capture us thinking we have a chance of success again. A real chance. It could show what that means to each individual and how it actually changes our behavior. That comes later, though. First I have to write the book, then get it published, then give it to a TV exec, and get them to make it a TV show, Shaun said. That sounds pretty awesome, man, honestly. It'd be like a prequel to Entourage. Like before they were famous. Like how Vinny Chase was before he actually became Vinny Chase, Chris said. Only way more intimate. I'm talking close-ups, an invasion of privacy. And I want to show each character at their worst, when they're most desperate, when they're crying with their own dick in their hand masturbating. I want to show how that behavior changes over the course of a lifetime through success and failure, Shaun said. Chris laughed. That sounds awesome. Which one of us is going to be in the book jerking off while crying, he asked. That was just an example, but I plan on putting all the self-deprecating stuff onto my character. So if it had to happen, it'll be my character that does it. Just because I'm not going to have you guys look like a bunch of weak pussies, Shaun said. Cool, Chris said, nodding his head. Okay! So I've been working on my questions for you for the past 2 days. Do you want to just dive in? Sure, man, it's your show, Chris said. Okay, just a heads up, some of the questions might be a little invasive in nature, which I apologize for. Just know the more information you give me, the better it will be for the book, Shaun said. All right, I'm an open book, Chris said, settling himself into his chair. Thanks, man. All right, let's get started then. I'm so fucking excited for this, man. I'm sorry. Let me stay focused. Where to begin? Shaun flipped through pages in his composition notebook. Chris saw that each page was filled top to bottom with Shaun's illegible handwriting. He stopped on a page and scanned it with his forefinger. Okay, the first question I have here is, how did you feel during our senior year in high school? When we were at the height of our YFC fame, Shaun asked. He flipped to a blank page and waited for Chris to start talking. His pen was already pressed to the paper. I loved it. It was awesome. Best part of my life. I miss those days, Chris said. What do you miss about them? Shaun asked as he scribbled something down. The notoriety that we got, the bitches that were on my dick. I miss everything about it. The energy, Chris said. The energy. That's interesting. Are you less energetic now? Shaun asked. Definitely. I've, slowed down in life. I'm aware of it, too. That I haven't really done anything noteworthy in the past 2 to 3 years. I've been putting all my energy into work, and then when I get home, I'm too tired to do anything. Like, I miss how I used to write raps and sketches all the time. Now I don't smoke weed anymore, I want to get back into that, Chris said. So how much has weed been a part in your life? Shaun asked. It's been huge. I've just now been coming to terms with the fact that I've been addicted to it over the past couple of years, Chris said. Addicted? I thought people can't get addicted to weed. You can't really, but I just became dependent on it. Like, I was doing it so much that it got to the point where I couldn't function unless I was high, Chris said. As he spoke, he realized how accurate he was being. He had never thought about any of this, yet somehow it was all true. He noticed Shaun right at the top of the page. Weed is huge deal, in big letters. He underlined it twice. Chris looked away from the page. He's right. I just told him that. Did you go to work high? Shaun asked, not looking up from his notebook. Nah. I was never a fan of working while high. I get too paranoid. The other Chris, who's a manager there, does it all the time, and so does Anthony when he goes in. Wait a second. I'm sorry to cut you off. Your brother works with you at COSI? Shaun asked. Yeah. So does my nephew. I got them both jobs there, Chris said. Are you kidding me? Ronnie works there too? You have the whole fucking family over there? That's ridiculous. I never knew that shit. I'm sorry, please go on. But fuck, I've been seeing you this whole year, and I never knew that you got your brother and your nephew hired. That's crazy. Yeah, I got Anthony hired when I was promoted to manager. I got Anthony the head baker position, and Ronnie was hired as a baker a month and a half ago, Chris said. Fuck, good for you, being a good uncle and brother. Good for you. Thanks, Chris said. Back to the weed. When did you start getting into it? I started getting into it when I was 19. I tried it in high school a couple of times, but apparently I wasn't really doing it right. Anthony was the one who showed me how to inhale it and keep it in my lungs before breathing it out. He got into it from his coworkers at the hospital. Is he your supplier? Nah, but we go to the same guy. I think the main reason why I got so hooked on it in the first place was because of how available it was to me. Like, our drug dealer lived 10 minutes from our house. I could just text him to come through with a dime bag and he'd just show up. So I never experienced a shortage. It was just so convenient. How much do you think he spent on it? Oh, thousands. Thousands. Probably tens of thousands now that I think about it. Let's see. If I spend $240 on weed, it'll last me for 1 week. So I would do that every week. So that's a little less than $1,000 on weed alone a month. Then you have to factor in rolling papers, Dutch's, food, so that would probably put me well over $1,000 a month on just weed alone. Shaun looked up from his notebook with an expression of complete shock on his face. Fuck, that's insane, Chris. I never knew you were so hooked on it. I never knew. I mean, I always felt that it was annoying that every time we hung out, weed had to be involved. I just thought it was a recreational thing, like something you did to cut back and shit. I didn't know it was a real problem for you. Yeah, I haven't really been admitting that to myself until recently. But I took a look at my bank account the other day and saw no money in it, and just shit like that has been starting to bother me, Chris said. How'd you buy your new car if you were spending $1,000 on weed every month? Shaun asked. My boss Danny loaned me $2,000 or $3,000. I can't even remember. He only took $1,000 back though. I got to keep the rest, Chris said. Wow. I didn't know he liked you so much. I should have though. You've gotten promoted twice in 1 year. Yeah, I think he sees me in him. Like, I think I remind him of when I was younger, of when he was younger. I don't know. I guess he sees the potential that he used to have. Do you think it's misplaced at all? Shaun asked. I mean, at first when he offered me the job, I thought it was kind of coming out of nowhere. But now that I've been doing it for what seems like ever, it's starting to make sense why he offered me the position. I stay calm under pressure, and I'm able to get things done quickly. So Danny saw something new that you didn't see. Yeah, I guess so. Kind of crazy, but yeah, that's pretty much what happened. What do you like at COSI? Do your employees like you? Yeah, I'm like their favorite manager. I'm pretty laid back and non-confrontational. The only time I become a real dick is when something is supposed to be done and it hasn't been. I hate that shit. Wow, you sound like a real manager and shit. Yeah, man, it's crazy. Every time I leave work, I like almost forget what my job is. Like, I feel like high school just ended a couple of months ago. Then I look at my nephew Ronnie and he's about to be a senior next year and it just blows my mind. He's like doing all the shit that I was doing too. Rapping, working out, rapping, acting. Mrs. V keeps talking about how he reminds her of me and shit. It's just weird because it feels like it just happened for me. Okay. I'm just going to pop out questions just so you know. Some are going to be out of nowhere, so just bear with me, Shaun said. He wrote rapidly in his book. No problem, man. Go for it, Chris said. How do you feel about Kate? Shaun asked, taking his eyes off the page in front of him and staring at Chris. I mean, I love her. I've been with her since junior year. She's my girlfriend. I don't know what else you want me to tell you. Chris shifted in his seat. What do you love about her? Shaun asked, still staring at Chris. She's supportive of me. She wants me to do well. She puts up with me even though I can be an asshole sometimes. I put her through a lot and she doesn't really bother me that much about any of it. Not that much, Chris said.